you know, the traditional attack, you know, you know, you're gonna kill everybody in there. It's not about them. Okay. Well, I used to think that too. I would never throw water in the window. If I was crawling down a smoky hallway, right, and I'm starting to get burned, you got to take it. I guess I'm supposed to get burned to go to the burn center now, because if I open up on the smoke, that's worse than, you know, not opening up on smoke, you know. And so now we've learned that no, if you're burning, you're starting to feel that heat. Where are you going to feel it first? And this is kind of like the curve. The old way of doing it was what? What did we leave exposed? Your ears, right? I did that. I also burned my ears a whole bunch of times. All right. And I'll just say this again, going back to that mental performance initiative. When you're on fire, you make really bad decisions. Okay? Don't be on fire. Okay? So when I tell my friends, I still have friends that don't wear the hoods. They just maybe the flaps are down, but the hood's not on it. And yeah, I think in some fires there is a value there. But when you look at the burn curve, right? Things go vent limited, and when they take off, they're not a gradual increase in temperature. That's what the legacy fire did. So that gradual increase in temperature, that was one that you could go, ooh, get a little warm in here, time to go. Great. But that's not what happens now. What happens now is it goes from nothing to something so rapidly. All I think you're going to do is grab your ears, scream, and crawl into a ball. That's it. You're not going to be able to function like you think you're going to, or you're going to jump out a window without deploying your PSS. But the other interesting thing that we saw, again, you have to, if you don't have data, if you don't investigate, you can't manage. You can't really look at yourselves, you know, in a clear vision unless you really understand what's going on. So we had chiefs that went around and looked at all the near misses, and all of them went something like this. Everything was fine, and then all of a sudden, okay? And in that all of a sudden, brother, I am never going to leave your side. We are a team. I'm going nowhere. I'm your boss. You know, I'm first in, last out. All sounds great. But what we saw in reality was, when things go south, it's not every man for themselves. It's just decisions are made in that midbrain, that amygdala, that you get out, you know, you scramble, asses and elbows, as we say. Now you're outside the building. Once you get outside the building, what do you think happens? What's one of the first things you do? Whew, that was close. And what do you think happens when you go, whew, that was close? Your frontal lobe lights back up. Where's Joe? Oh, he's still in the building. We just had a member die in the New York City Fire Department. He ran out of air and died in 2018. Unacceptable. We got safety chiefs, we got sector chiefs, we got pass along, we got heads up display, we got viber alert. He ran out of air and died. Now there are other factors in there. I'm not going to get into the minutia. It doesn't matter. But in the end of the day, that's what happened. The other members of his company are outside the building. But you've seen there's a YouTube video. Which again, YouTube can be bad in some places. But that YouTube video gives us a timestamp and some radio transmissions to try to understand what happened. I know that officer. He's a phenomenal officer, really sharp guy. Been in that company a long time. But that's what happens in reality. And when we get in trouble, what do we all want to do? One of your men goes down. What do you want to do? What? Okay, but what are you going to do in that moment? You hear your man's down. What are you doing? Trying to get to him. And that's what everybody does. We all get to him. But wait a minute. Whoa. We're not done with primary searches yet. I thought it's about them. But the minute it's one of us, they get kicked to the curb and we go for our guy. I'm not saying that. I understand it. I've been there too. Hopefully we don't stop our engine attack, right? That someone has, a guy just told me in the last class, said, you know what we've been doing? Our RIT team doesn't go for the guy. It goes for the line to make sure to put the fire out. And the guys on the inside, there's already 10 guys on the inside going for the guy down. They set a couple of maydays. But we have to make sure that fire attack doesn't get kicked to the curb. But think about it, and this has happened time and time again. We you know, the civilian gets to a different level, and we're going for our guy. Now, again, I'm not saying that that's, you know, That's just the nature of the beast. That's the reality of what happens. And that's why it's so important not to get in that position. Now, I don't think anyone of any of those members who are in that position meant to be in that. No one wants to die, right? There was no one. Here's a great stat for you. The New York City Fire Department from 1989 to 2010 had 45 line of duty deaths. Okay? In all of those line of duty deaths, there was not one dead civilian at any of those fires. And where the member was searching, there was no one there. Now, sometimes we know there's a known life hazard, and sometimes we don't, suspected life hazard. But that's an overwhelming number. That's a crazy number. You would think there'd be a few in there. And I could only register one rescue in any of those fires, where they actually rescued someone out of a position that if they stayed there, they would have died. That's disturbing to me. That's really disturbing. Now, I can't tell you exactly what that means. It certainly does not mean anyone died in vain. Absolutely not. They were doing their job. But maybe it means that there are times that we're taking a little more risk than warranted. Maybe we didn't do enough intel of civilians on the fire ground who maybe could say, oh no, I know no one's in there, you know? And do we always believe that? Probably not, but I tell you what we're trying to do in the New York City Fire Department is that when there's a credible witness, they say no one's in there, we're still going in and doing our job, but you know, maybe the reins are pulled in a little bit. Be a little bit smarter. Maybe control some doors, control some ventilation, get some water on the fire. On the other side, when the woman says, my 2 kids are up there, guess what? Then it's game on. You are going to risk a lot to save a lot. But even in the end, it's still not a suicide mission. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, very, very hard to do. It's not an easy job at all. But we're, as you know, in my department, we're progressing down these roads, and we're trying to learn as much as we can from all this. We've implemented a lot of the changes from UL. We actually did the Governor's Island project. That was all about trying to understand all this stuff more. Transitional attack, vertical vent, door control, things like that. And everything we learned from that, we've implemented. And for the most part, we know it's successful. There are some fires that from time to time you might hear some grumblings about bulkheads not getting opened and things like that in a timely fashion. But for the most part, we have a lot more successes than failures based upon knowing this information. Transitional attack, there's been a whole bunch of fires in the last 2 years that we're documenting where a chief got smart at one point and said, you know, they can't find the stairs to the second floor, you know what? Put that fire out. You know, knock it down. And guess what? There's no negative effects to any of that. You know what I mean? Whereas, you know, you might hear some guys grumble about, I don't like. I had a chief recently tell me, yeah, I don't like that technique. And I'm like, well, why not? Or that tactic? Why not? Well, because then they'll know they always have that out. They can do that all the time. We're not going to do that all the time. But when it's appropriate, you should not be hesitating. We had a basement fire about a month ago. Engine made a good move through the basement, but now that it's a cluttered basement, they're starting to run low on air, and there was one more room in the rear. And they could have waited for the other engine to come down, and it could have been a transfer and all that stuff, but that means that fire would have burned for another 2 or 3 or 4 minutes before they got to it. It's a non-fireproof private dwelling. What do you think that fire is going to do at one point? It's going to transition upstairs, which it actually did anyway. But at one point, Chief just said, get a line around the rear, put the fire out. Okay? There's no shame in that. That's called smart firefighting. Put the fire out.